his mom won't let him play, Cutler confirmed that he could recall only the faintest details about his friend, including the fact that his mother makes chocolate chip cookies and that he has a dog of some kind.
He's got Killer Instinct, Assassin's Creed, Battlefield 4, and Titanfall? Man, that game's awesome. Anyway, I've just been calling him Flamethrower because that's his gamer tag. Hopefully he doesn't catch on. Hey, can I stick around for a few more hours? I'm so close to beating this.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. You want to join the show? You can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, we've got Ian.
The nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
And Chris.
So whenever we start the show out, we always kind of do a quick review beforehand because we always, bring different show prep to the floor. And sometimes we bring the same show prep to the show, and that's what we have done tonight. Again, we don't coordinate these things in advance. Chris, you and I had a very similar story about Russia looking at taking Bitcoin and Bitcoin for oil and gas. This according to Decrypt.co and other cryptocurrency news media. They say here that apparently Pavel Zavalny, the chairman of the Russia State Duma Committee on Energy, said during a videotape...
They still call it the Duma?
What is that?
That's what they called the legislature during the Soviet years.
Wow. I guess.
Wow.
So he said during a videotaped press conference this week that the country would accept Bitcoin for its energy exports. According to a transcript, Zavalny said the West would either need to pay for oil using rubles or gold, while allies or neutral countries such as China and Turkey can settle in rubles or their native currencies. He then added, you can also trade Bitcoins.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So that's a pretty huge deal. And, this is the chairman of the committee, so presumably this is a not just like we're talking about it. This is a maybe thing. It sounds like, yeah, if you want to buy oil for Bitcoin from Russia, now you can do that. That's a thing.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting if they actually have transactions, like some sizable transactions in any kind of crypto. If they do, and it becomes a thing, that's going to have a massive cause, the markets to go crazy when it comes to crypto.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, if you're an oil buying nation, okay, you can have your reserves in dollars. Now you can have your reserves in rubles. It used to have to be, you used to have enough dollar reserves to buy oil, and that was the basis of the petrodollar. Now you can have your money in dollars, which is losing value, rubles, which is losing value precipitously, or Bitcoin, which is either staying the same or gaining.
I mean, Bitcoin can go down.
It can go down.
It can go down, but has there been any... Since the introduction of Bitcoin, has there been a year where it has lost value year over year?
There probably has been.
I think there has been, but you have to understand also that if you've given it any, I think 2 or 3 year period, it's like the value has skyrocketed from where it was. So
yeah, there's never been a 2-year drop. The only time there might have been a 1-year drop is this very last year.
I don't know. After 2017's spike, it went down for a couple of years. It took like 3 years for it to come back from that. So, but it might have all gone down in that first year and then started to come back up. I don't know. I'd have to look at the charts.
Yeah, you're probably right. Actually, that was probably the one time.
But history shows if you have held on to Bitcoin for 3 or 4 years since when you bought it, it's probably gone up.
Yeah.
History shows again and again how nature points out the follies of man.
It's not even gone. It's not even if you held it at least 3 years, it's not even gone up just a little bit. It's gone up a lot. from where you
chances.
bought it at.
Good chances, yeah.
Yeah. So like if you bought it at the height, for example, like when it hit $20,000, it dropped to
That's
as low
the previous
as like
height.
yeah, 6,000.
Yeah.
It dropped as low as
Yeah, I think it
6,000.
went down
But
as like-
what's it at? It went all the way up to 66 since then, and it
Correct.
dropped back to 40. But 40 is still way higher than 20.
Yep, sure is. In fact, today I think it hit around $44,000 or $45,000 per Bitcoin. So, I mean, the odds that some country is going to pay with Bitcoin seems fairly slim. I mean, if you've got a bunch of rubles sitting around, you might as well pay with those first,
Right.
because again, those are going to lose value.
I don't know. The ruble is actually the one national currency that I think might not be at its low point or at its high point now, just because there was a huge drop in the ruble when sanctions hit.
Right.
And the thing is, the sanctions aren't going to be forever. You know, people act like these things are forever and ever, amen. But the reality is they're not going to sanction Russia forever. They can't. So the ruble I expect to recover somewhat.
Yeah, unless I'm mistaken about this, I don't even think it went down. I mean, it don't get me wrong, it dropped, but like it didn't drop that much. I think it was like something like 80. It went from like 80 to 94 on the dollar or something like that. So
Really, is that
Yeah, I'd
all?
heard there was a pretty precipitous drop, but we should probably look into
yeah,
it
it would be
rather
good to
than
look
actually
into.
speculate about it.
I am speculating a little bit, but that's what I thought I recall reading.
I must admit, I'm speculating too because
hearing.
I haven't had the money for speculation, so I haven't been watching currencies or anything that quickly.
Not that any of us would want to buy something like a fiat currency, even if we could.
No.
because
I mean,
that's
why?
insane.
Why would I buy rubles when I can just spend my crypto?
Yeah.
To buy oil.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the reason why it's kind of difficult to use cryptocurrency to buy something like oil is, generally you want something that's going to be stable to make a purchase like that. I mean, we're not talking about like here in Keene, New Hampshire.
Really playing devil's advocate, what you want to make your payment in is the thing you think will drop the most in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was making payments, I would want to make my payments in dollars first.
Or rubles or whatever.
Yeah. Spend what you want to get rid of.
Right.
Yeah.
Hold what you want to hold.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's why I was saying I can't imagine many are going to actually use Bitcoin to make this purchase.
I think the times,
but it's great that it's available. I mean, it's amazing.
the times that I think that I see there's so sometimes it's valuable to spend your crypto over spending your dollars, and I think it just kind of depends on the circumstances. Like if you're paying high fees for something to purchase something from overseas, because,
Or if you can't send a bank transfer because you've got sanctions against you or something like that, right?
Like there's a lot of situations where crypto can come
Then
in
it makes
handy,
sense.
right? Or if you're trying to buy something from the dark web, not that I'm suggesting people are, but there's a lot of different situations.
People do. Otherwise, the dark web wouldn't exist.
Well, sure. So, but anyway, the point is that there's a lot of situations where people, it's either going to save them money or it's the only option, or just a lot of different things.
Well, plus, and this is kind of a different situation. Normally, when we're trying to get like a local business to take cryptocurrency here in the Keene area, which is one of the top places on the planet for businesses that accept crypto on a per capita basis, you have to talk to the business owner about, obviously you can't spend this with your vendors, right? Like whoever it is that's selling you, like the Corner News here, which has been taking Bitcoin since I think as far back as 2013 or something. It's been a long time. She's got to buy more inventory from some kind of a supplier, and the odds are that the supplier isn't going to take Bitcoin at this point in the game. So it's sort of a dead end. So what you have to tell them is, look, it's not going to be 90% of your sales. It's going to be 1%, maybe. It's going to be a 0.5%. It's not going to be a huge chunk. So then in that case, you can just kind of play with it. As long as you're not scraping by, barely making the rent payments, if you get 0.5% or a percentage of your sales in crypto, you're fine just sitting on that and waiting and seeing. And that's a different situation than buying oil. However, since you're buying it from the supplier in this case, the Russian government probably doesn't really care because it wants that Bitcoin. So it's no skin off the buyer's back to spend whatever amount of Bitcoin they have, because they don't have to worry about it fluctuating later. It's usually the person that takes it that's worried about the fluctuations. But in the case of the Russian government, I presume it's I'm pretty sure it's a Russian state oil company that is doing the oil deals here. So they don't have anybody else to answer to. They can just take the Bitcoin, sell the oil, and sit on the Bitcoin. And again, it probably won't be the majority of their sales anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's not really impossible to pay suppliers in crypto. What's difficult is paying every supplier in crypto. There's actually.
Do you have suppliers you can pay with crypto?
Oh yeah, lots of them.
That's great.
Actually. But
mostly in China.
Even not in China, but U.S. suppliers for sure, definitely lots of them. But even for like a restaurant, maybe you buy plastic forks, you can go on Amazon and pay with crypto for that. So
yeah, that's true.
It's not as hard as you think to spend that 1% that you might get in crypto, at their
I wouldn't recommend you spend it though, because you
maybe
probably want to hold on to it. More coming up.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson, from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict, or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, the number here is 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. We're talking about a pretty big piece of news for the world of cryptocurrency, and that is that Russia is now saying, via the head of what they're calling the Russia State Duma Committee on Energy, Pavel Zavalny, who spoke at a hearing recently and said not only will they be accepting apparently gold for oil.
And Russia has been buying up gold for a long time.
That's true.
They've been preparing for this.
And not only could you pay gold for oil, but you can also pay with Bitcoin. And so that's a pretty big deal because it's the first time I've ever heard of anything like that where some, oil dealer like that has publicly announced they're willing to take Bitcoin. But that's not all.
Well, the only two times that I can remember oil dealers saying that they would, or even that they planned to accept something other than dollars for oil, there were two people who have said that in recent memory. One was Saddam Hussein, the other was Muammar Gaddafi.
And then they
common denominator, they're both dead.
Yeah.
What's actually interesting is there was Venezuela with their supposed crypto,
the petro
that was backed by oil. Now, not quite the same thing, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, although
that was a disaster.
That would work if it was somebody other than Venezuela putting it out. I mean, it makes sense as a way to finance business. If you're running a gold mine, for example, okay, and you want people to invest in your gold mine, what the best way to do it that I can think of in the absence of government regulations to the contrary would be to make a gold denominated cryptocurrency and sell it. So people basically pay in advance for the gold, and then once you dig the gold up in the ground, you redeem the cryptocurrency for gold, which is what the futures market was originally designed for. The way the futures market was supposed to work, now it's just used for speculation because it's detached from reality. But the way it was supposed to work is if you were a farmer, you would sell wheat futures for delivery at harvest time, and you would sell it in the spring, and then you would take that money in the spring and you would use it to buy your wheat field or your wheat seeds, to pay your labor and do all that, and then once the crop came in, it was already sold and you just delivered the crop
to IOU.
Exactly. And that's very important for financing things, but unfortunately the futures market's completely corrupt. At least in gold and silver. I haven't looked into it for, getting physical delivery of pork bellies because I got no place to store physical pork bellies.
So in related news here, there was a headline that I saw a few days ago that now Russia is announcing that quote-unquote unfriendly countries, so I presume that's any country that is sanctioning them or friendly to the sanctioning countries, is now going to be required to pay for their gas exports in rubles only, according to Putin.
So they're trying to jack the price of the ruble back up by making the petro ruble.
The president explained, according to RT, that Russia plans to abandon all compromised currencies, and he used the term compromised in this case, in payment settlements. He added that illegitimate decisions by
He doesn't understand that includes Bitcoin, BTC, but oh well.
He said that illegitimate decisions by a number of Western countries to freeze Russia's assets destroyed all confidence in their currencies, saying, quote, I have decided to implement in the shortest possible time a set of measures to change the payments for, yes, let's start with this, for our natural gas supplied to the so-called unfriendly countries in Russian rubles, that is, to stop using all compromised currencies for transactions. He said further, quote, it doesn't make sense to deliver our goods to the EU and the U.S. and get paid in dollars and euros. So that's a huge change.
Good point.
Huge change. Plus, you've also got the other news that we talked about where China, I believe, was talking with India about accepting, was it China and India or was it Russia and India? Anyway, there was, no, it was Saudi Arabia. China and Saudi Arabia, were talking about accepting payments in the yuan instead of the petrodollar as well. So that hasn't happened yet. It's not a done deal.
But is super interesting because of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States.
Which has been not so great recently.
But it's one-sided. I mean, apparently our government loves Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia doesn't care a single bean about our government. Note when Biden went to them hat in hand, will you please pump some more oil? And they said, nah. But keep sending us weapons so we can continue our genocide.
He would, if I recall correctly, they wouldn't even take his phone call.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Although the message was passed, the king would not take his phone call. You know,
which is pretty funny.
It really is, especially since we've been not only turning a blind eye to their genocide in Yemen, and when I say we, I mean the American government, but actively supporting it by selling them weapons.
So now, after this announcement that unfriendly nations have to pay in the ruble, apparently the EU, well, they're mad about it. According to RT.com, leaders from some European Union member states...
Are they so mad that they can cry oil?
They've claimed that, according to this here, Moscow's demand for that unfriendly countries pay rubles for Russian gas could reach, or rather breach, supply contracts. Reuters reported Wednesday.
And didn't their freezing Russian assets also breach supply contracts?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to sound like I'm loving Russia because I have never been. I mean, the idea of having a head of state who's ex-KGB is just as bad as having a head of state who's ex-CIA, George Bush.
No doubt. But the enemy of my enemy is...
Not necessarily my friend, but in this case, the enemy of my enemy is not in a position to harm me. Well, my enemy is in a position to harm me and is actively harming me every day.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the possibility is there for him to harm you, but the reality is there's already somebody harming you, and they're already in the United States. It's called the U.S. government.
The possibility is there. He could nuke. I don't think that, I mean, Russia can barely invade the Ukraine. I don't think they'd have a chance in hell of invading the United States, where there would be, as a Japanese general put it, a rifle behind every blade of grass.
It's not likely that we have anything to fear of them invading. It's more like we have more of a fear of them as far as like nuking us and the world, basically. But that seems less like, doesn't seem that likely to me.
Well, they could nuke us. I don't think that's likely because I think that is basically, I think they would find themselves at war with the entire world with the exception of China and North Korea. If they did that.
The U.S. is good at fear-mongering and making us scared of all our enemies. But, I mean, what can they really do?
They're not so good at that with me. The only people they've made me afraid of is them.
Unfortunately, most of the population, they're good at fear-mongering with.
Most of the population is idiots.
The number, if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. We'll continue. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the US Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail?
Earlier today, he unveiled a new energy partnership deal with the European Union in a bid to reduce the bloc's dependence on Russian gas. The Ukrainians claimed today that 300 civilians, mostly women and children, were killed when the Russians shelled a theatre in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol earlier this month. The UN says it's received information about mass graves in Mariupol. Also today, the Biden administration's national security advisor pledged that the United States will never use chemical weapons, correcting President Biden, who said yesterday that a Russian chemical attack in Ukraine would elicit a response in kind. In other news, beleaguered British ferry operator P&O says its services will not be running for the next few days. The announcement came after the British government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO after he fired 800 staff without warning or consultation last week. And US Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been discharged from hospital after spending several days suffering from what the court is calling flu-like symptoms. He is yet to comment on the revelation that his wife played an active role trying to overturn the outcome of America's 2020 presidential election. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Russia telling quote-unquote unfriendly countries that if they want to buy oil from Russia from this point on, they're going to have to pay in the ruble. The number, again, 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio here tonight. Also, they're willing to accept Bitcoin from, I'm not sure, it's not clear if it's the friendly countries from whom they're willing to accept Bitcoin or anyone. That's not made clear by the statements from the State Committee on, or the State Duma Committee on Energy, which did say in a recent conference that they will be accepting Bitcoin for oil and gas. But they didn't say whether it was only from the friendly countries or only from the unfriendly countries.
It would be nice if they'd included a list of who they consider friendly countries, too. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that China would be on the list, maybe North Korea.
Venezuela.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They're friendly
Iran.
with Venezuela. They're friendly with Cuba still, I think. Although they're not sending money to Cuba since the Soviet Union fell, as far as I know.
I suspect as any country that is not engaging in sanctions would be on the friendly list.
Yeah.
And any that are engaging in that would be on the unfriendly list. But if you want to learn...
That's true. I'm guessing India would be on it because they abstained from the UN vote. And
That's right.
They themselves are being sanctioned.
As a result, right?
Yeah, which is insane. That's like schoolyard bully stuff. If you still talk, if you don't help me fight this person, then you become an enemy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty
Definitely
petty.
schoolyard bully.
You're either with us or you're against us.
Bitcoin.com, by the way, is where you can go to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. You can learn the basics over at Bitcoin.com. Just click Get Started at the top of the page there, and you can get some introductory videos that will give you a real understanding, or at least a start of an understanding of some of the things that you really ought to understand prior to getting into cryptocurrency. There's a little learning curve, and you can start taking that curve right now by going to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page. You can also buy your first Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or fraction of, because again, you don't have to buy a whole coin. You can get a piece of it over at Bitcoin.com. They've got more than just Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. The last time I saw the site, which was a while ago, they had a large variety. I was quite surprised at how many coins they had available there. Plus, you can also get the latest news headlines over at news.bitcoin.com. So, again, just focusing here from the story from RT on the EU, they're now upset. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Thursday that the currency that his country's...
Schultz, I know nothing. I see nothing.
His country's companies must pay for Russian fossil fuels is fixed in their contracts. Quote, there are fixed contracts everywhere with the currency in which the deliveries are being paid... being part of these contracts. In most cases, it says euros or dollars.
How are they going to pay in euros and dollars without using SWIFT?
Great question.
That's this is interesting.
I'd call that force majeure.
Yeah, they're changing the terms of they're changing the conditions effectively, but they haven't actually restricted SWIFT. I think they've only mostly restricted SWIFT, and they're
restricted
excluding
certain
that
Russian banks from SWIFT.
Yeah, they're
right?
excluding that for oil payments. And
Oh,
things.
really?
Yeah.
How convenient.
Yes. As I understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sorry, but if I was Putin and you said, wait, I can use SWIFT to accept money but not to spend it,
right?
Well, then I can't use SWIFT, can I?
Right.
What am I going to do with money I can't spend?
Indeed. Yeah, great question. So in this particular case, all right, fine. Let's say Russia has violated the contract. What are you going to do about it?
Huh?
You want their oil, don't you? They're willing to accept payment even from the quote unquote unfriendly countries here, but they want it in rubles. And if you don't want to buy oil from Russia, then go buy it from somewhere else, right? Like, what are they going to do if Russia violated its contract and the international court says you violated your contract? Well, they're already basically punishing these people. So, like, what skin off their back is it going to be if somebody says some judge says, "Yep, you violated the contract"? What's that going to do to them?
It's like when Andrew Jackson, who did some good things, but he was also responsible for the Trail of Tears, which was an atrocity. But the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Trail of Tears was unconstitutional. And Andrew Johnson's response was, well, tell the Chief Justice to raise an army and stop me.
There you go.
Yep. Not surprised.
So that's pretty much it. There's another comment by the Italian Prime Minister who said exactly the same thing about it being a breach of contract. Well, tough, What are you going to do about it?
That's the problem when you start playing these games,
Yeah. It's going to be one-upsmanship.
Yeah, that's all it is. They're playing games. Both sides are playing games. This is not, it may have not been right for Russia to invade, but then again, the U.S. has been, interfering.
NATO's been expanding.
Yep, they've been expanding. There's no doubt about that. And it just keeps going back and forth,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of like it amazes me that people will rip somebody off and then expect them to keep their contract. I had an experience where somebody ripped me off for some weed when I was in the weed business and then came back later and tried to buy weed.
Amazing.
So I took his money, and then I said, okay, now we're even.
Right.
And he was like, well, aren't you going to give me what I bought? And I said, no. Don't you remember ripping me off?
What did he say?
He didn't seem to remember it. So maybe he was drunk at the time.
Yeah.
But weed has never made me lose my memory.
He was
but
probably high on something
alcohol
else.
Sure will.
Yeah, something else. For sure.
The big things for memory are alcohol and roofies.
Oof.
I don't think even heroin makes you lose your memory. It just makes you pass out so you don't accumulate any memories.
By the way, Russian gas accounts for 40 to 45% of Europe's total gas consumption. So this is a pretty big deal.
This is a
They really didn't think this out before they started with the sanctions, did they?
This is a bi-directional dependence. Russia needs Europe, and Europe needs Russia.
Do they need Europe? What do they get from Europe?
Money.
Well,
their economy runs on
but
money.
What do they really need money for? They produce food and they produce energy.
Yeah, sure. If you don't want any of the luxury of
manufactured goods are somewhat limited, but there's nothing to stop them
They can trade with
from
China.
manufacturing if they have
true.
raw materials.
And
they can trade with China, and China has pretty much all of the raw materials that you need or can get it easily from Africa.
If you're going to manufacture something, you're not going to send it to Europe to be manufactured.
Russia actually is more of an exporter of raw materials and an importer of finished products. So,
But
they
again,
do
what
have
do you
some
want
And
industry.
that's the thing. There's what stops them from manufacturing themselves. They haven't built the plant because they haven't needed the plant. But if they have raw materials, they can use those same raw materials to
make a
build an
manufacturing
industrial base and then to build the stuff they need in the industrial base.
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about, but there are definitely, especially if you have sanctions against you, there are definitely some things that you cannot easily manufacture. There's parts that
you gave the example of some fancy German processor chip making machines. Or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not
But
exclusive to
is
that.
Germany going to cut off sales of those machines to China? And if not, what's to stop China from reselling them to the Soviet Union or to Russia?
This is a good question, and the answer to that may be parts and service. So, when you're getting into highly technical, machines that manufacture other machines, there's probably parts and service contracts and all sorts of things. That it's not to say it's impossible, but it's kind of like take example of maintaining the flight, right? They have
the
planes.
Flight?
No, airplanes.
Oh, okay.
They have airplanes in Russia, right? A lot of them. But even their own domestically manufactured airplanes are dependent on parts sourced from other countries that are sanctioning them now. So maintaining their own homegrown aircraft is a problem.
But how many of those parts really take something they can't produce to manufacture?
To replicate, you mean?
Right.
And that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just saying.
They don't have to worry about copyright or patent anymore.
That might be, but they still are going to have, issues when it comes to interstate flight.
More on the way here. The number 603-283-6160. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
Phones are open. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. That is the point here of Free Talk Live. We also invite you online. Anytime you want to join us, there's our social media site at social.freetalklive.com. You can head over there and interact not only with other hosts of the show, but other Free Talk Live listeners. You will find that, once again, over at social.freetalklive.com. Coming up, Chris, I know you wanted to talk about maybe another country that might be making Bitcoin legal tender. And it's St.
Love me tender.
St. Martin? And I don't even know where. Is that a Caribbean nation? Do we even know?
I don't recall.
I think it's an island.
It might be a British overseas.
Now I have to know. Could somebody Google
or
that?
something maybe? Or
I don't have a box with me.
There is a St. Martin in the Caribbean apparently, but is it the one with 2 A's? Because there's one with 2 A's too. Anyway, we'll have to figure this out.
No idea.
There's more than one St. Martin?
Yeah, actually. So there's Sint Martin. So there's Sint Martin, Maarten, of which the capital is Philipsburg. And then there's Saint Martin. Maybe it's the same place?
I suspect it's different
I
spellings.
suspect it's the same place with different spellings, because there are places like that. I mean, back in the day, if you read Old English literature, they're not even consistent in the way they spell the same word throughout the same document.
It is the same place.
Okay,
St. Martin. So it's
I strongly doubted there was more than one St. Martin.
It's part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, apparently.
Oh, it's the Netherlands. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I knew they had some overseas territories, but
looks like it's east of Haiti, apparently, east of that area.
Wow, the Netherlands still has colonies?
I guess so.
In the New World? That's kind of amazing.
Trying to think, don't they own like Iceland or Greenland or one of them?
Ooh, I don't know offhand.
Think so. I think they settled Iceland, which the funny thing is Iceland is the green one and Greenland is the icy one.
Yeah. I remember learning that in school.
Yeah.
Dutch is the official language as well as English in St. Martin.
Well, English is the official language in the United States, but that doesn't make us a British colony anymore.
Well,
true.
All right, so what's the news about St. Martin? Do you have that handy?
Yeah, so I got a story from you today. Bitcoin Cash could become legal tender in St. Martin.
Bitcoin
Cash.
Bitcoin Cash, yes.
Could we say that again in unison? We weren't quite synchronized.
I know. I actually just occurred to me that this was Bitcoin Cash when I read the headline.
Wow.
I think that was three of us.
That makes a lot more sense than Bitcoin BTC, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Where's this story coming from?
St. Martin.
U.today.
There's only one.
Yeah.
The website, though? U.today?
It's U.today.
Okay.
Today is the domain name. So,
all right.
Yeah.
It's a TLD?
Yeah.
Wow.
Top level domain. Yeah. So, I think it's, I don't know if you pronounce, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to pronounce it St. Martin, but.
St. Martin.
Yeah.
It was founded with people from Boston.
St. Martin, a constituent country of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, could make Bitcoin Cash the most prominent fork of Bitcoin its legal tender.
Wow. Somebody knew what they were doing in St. Martin. I'll tell you that much, because it's not what most people would think of first, but it makes so much more sense in using BTCs with its crazy fees.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, that rhymes, BTC with its crazy fee.
It's way more useful of a currency than Bitcoin is.
No doubt.
But yeah, I it's interesting. I'm not quite as like critical of Bitcoin as I think a lot of people are, but certainly.
You ever make a transaction with a $50 fee?
No,
okay.
I'm not that stupid. But, well, actually, no, I think
it's
I have.
been a while since Bitcoin has had insane fees like that, but they're still way too high.
Yeah. And the thing is, it happens anytime that Bitcoin bubbles up. It happened in 2017, and it happened in 2020, whatever.
I don't think
maybe they didn't go to 50, but they went pretty high.
Yeah, I don't think I've paid more than like $1 probably in most of the transactions that I've made as far as Bitcoin is concerned.
Still, it's too much.
A while.
Bitcoin Cash, for instance, or Dash, you're going to pay usually less than 2 cents or a cent's worth of
right. And this
crypto.
is exactly why it makes a lot more sense.
Right.
That Bitcoin Cash would be adopted.
You can't go. For instance, one of the problems with Bitcoin and its acceptance in El Salvador, which I've got a whole story about that, by the way. Maybe we'll get into it. But one of the difficulties has been if you're a 70-year-old guy selling churros or something like that on the street out of a cart, you can't afford $1 fee when it comes to sending your Bitcoin out to be exchanged or whatever. And your customers can't afford it either.
Not when the currency exchange rates are different, so you might be selling your churros for the equivalent of a quarter US.
Yeah.
You know, that's not unusual in a lot of less developed countries. Things aren't as expensive.
No one is going to want to pay $1 fee on a 25-cent transaction. So
nobody certainly isn't going to want to.
The Bitcoin transaction fees have killed microtransactions, which was originally one of the real benefits of using Bitcoin.
And it's also killed banking the unbanked, which was another one of the big reasons for Bitcoin. BTC is... I'm sorry, I won't hold BTC. If somebody gives me BTC, when and if I'm able to accept crypto again, I will immediately turn it into something else.
Yeah, it's definitely if you want to make small transactions, I would definitely not recommend Bitcoin Cash. It is interesting.
You would not recommend BTC.
Bitcoin. Yeah, I would not recommend Bitcoin. I would recommend Bitcoin Cash. It's still, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to go and say it's not useful at all, but I will say that it's certainly less useful for especially smaller transactions. So
it's useful for doing very large transactions between whales, but the problem is that's not where the value of a currency comes from.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a whale though to pay 50 cents or $1 or whatever on a $500 transaction.
You do have to be someone in the United States or in the Western world, though. If you're in Africa and you're making $2 a day, that's not even an option for you.
Yeah, that's certainly a true statement. Yeah. It definitely doesn't work for people outside of the Western
world. And that's
world.
what Satoshi Nakamoto was trying to do. One of the things that he or she, whoever that person is that made Bitcoin, was trying to make a form of value transfer that could be accessed by anyone on the planet. And because there's so many people who are poor on the planet, having high transaction fees cuts all of them out from that equation, and that's tragic.
And he had to have known that the block size would have to grow eventually.
No,
he was putting out proof of concept software. So you don't necessarily make your proof of concept scale. You just make it so that you can make it scale when you need to.
Wasn't this in the original white paper?
That it did not have a block size. Originally, Bitcoin when it was released did not. But they added that. He added it later.
At some point, I'm pretty sure that there was before it was released or something like that, or maybe in the early days, this was like a topic of conversation was like the block size and how it doesn't scale, and so there were things that needed to be worked out. Still, it hadn't been decided on.
That's right.
So.
And what people don't understand is what Bitcoin is really backed by. And Bitcoin is really backed by the service of recording and maintaining the record of transactions. And that service becomes more and more expensive. And when it becomes expensive, it's not worth using it when other people can provide the same service cheaper.
Yeah, it's a fair statement.
So what about St. Martin? What's going on there?
So let's see here. Rolando Prison, the head of the United People's Party, says he has already started exploring such a bill. Bitcoin and non-fungible tokens would also be exempt from capital gains, according to Princeton.
NFTs? God. I don't see the point of NFTs.
I don't know anyone who sees the point of NFTs.
It's like they're a psyop or something.
It's just a fad. It's the latest fad. Remember the CryptoKitties thing from 4 years ago?
Beanie Babies.
Yeah, there was an Ethereum token.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just now they can make anything an NFT.
Nobody was selling CryptoKitties for $250,000, though.
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to what those were going for. But it was a huge fad that came up and kind of went away. And NFTs, I suspect, are going to be the same kind of... they've definitely blown up bigger than CryptoKitties because now every company, every corporation is jumping on the NFT bandwagon. We'll talk more. A lot of them are. Yeah, it's blown up big time. We got more on the way, though, about what's happening in St. Martin. What might be happening, because it's just a bill right now. But
it's a thought.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the US Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail?
Earlier today, he unveiled a new energy partnership deal with the European Union in a bid to reduce the bloc's dependence on Russian gas. The Ukrainians claimed today that 300 civilians, mostly women and children, were killed when the Russians shelled a theatre in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol earlier this month. The UN says it's received information about mass graves in Mariupol. Also today, the Biden administration's national security advisor pledged that the United States will never use chemical weapons, correcting President Biden, who said yesterday that a Russian chemical attack in Ukraine would elicit a response in kind. In other news, beleaguered British ferry operator P&O says its services will not be running for the next few days. The announcement came after the British government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO after he fired 800 staff without warning or consultation last week. And US Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been discharged from hospital after spending several days suffering from what the court is calling flu-like symptoms. He is yet to comment on the revelation that his wife played an active role trying to overturn the outcome of America's 2020 presidential election. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We are at the end of a month now of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and yesterday President Biden, European and NATO leaders all insisted the West is more united than ever and more determined to beat back Russia's aggression, if necessary, over the long term. But is that correct? Richard Ensor, Ukraine correspondent for The Economist, is in the western city of Lviv.
The fortitude and the unity shown not just within Ukraine but around the world has made it possible to resist this Russian imperialist war of territorial conquest, and that unity needs to be maintained not just for 1 month, but for the duration of the war. And of course, the big risk is that this coalition abroad starts to fray, and the willingness to feel a little bit of heat in order to sanction Russia and to break off the economic ties that have been built with Russia over the years, that starts to become a little bit more complicated when European countries like Hungary and Germany get cold feet. At some point, something else somewhere in the world is going to blow up. There's going to be another crisis. And then when Ukraine isn't the only ball in the air, that's when you get the real test of political will, when you don't have the eyes of the entire world on the crisis in Ukraine. And that's when the politics of this situation start to get very vexing.
And there is another crisis brewing in the Korean peninsula, where North Korea test-fired another intercontinental ballistic missile only this week. The main news again, US officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk in the east. And beleaguered British ferry operator P&O is suspending all services for the next few days. The announcement came after the government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Good morning. Later this afternoon, I will be engaging in an extramarital affair. Of course, I will wish that I had never made the horrible mistake I'm about to spend several hours making, but sadly, I'm currently too blinded by greed and lust to care about or consider the consequences of my actions. The liaison I will be taking part in shortly with two poor deaf teenage runaways is in direct opposition to the values you elected me to uphold. I also wish to apologize to my wife, Linda, to my two beautiful children, Allison and Christopher. It hurts me more than you will ever know that this scandal will impact your life so terribly. I can only pray that the revelations you will soon hear concerning my fetishes, physical flexibility, and penis will not scar you to the point of dementia. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get to the hotel immediately, so I will not be taking questions. Thank you.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. You can dial in here. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. And phones are open for you at 603-283-6160. Is the island of St. Martin going to become the crypto capital of the Caribbean? That is what one of the politicians there, the leader apparently of the United People's Party, had to say recently.
The name of the party sure doesn't sound auspicious.
And I don't know if this is in your story, Chris, because I've got one here from news.bitcoin.com. But apparently this guy is taking his entire salary in Bitcoin Cash.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
I have not got that far through the story, so I don't know.
Well, we're going to get into this further and find out what the plan is here, what the plan might be, because this isn't a done deal. I guess this guy's just talking at this point, but he is working on some kind of piece of legislation that may actually legalize Bitcoin Cash as far as like legal tender is concerned in St. Martin, which, for those that are unfamiliar with St. Martin, as I was, it is located just to the northwest of St. Kitts and Nevis, which is interesting because Roger Ver, longtime supporter of Free Talk Live and the man behind Bitcoin.com, he lives most of the year in St. Kitts and Nevis. So
interesting.
I wonder if he's been making trips up to St. Martin, because I know he's done a lot for helping local businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis accept Bitcoin Cash. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's expanding his range out to nearby islands, or if just somebody else did. I'm interested in hearing the history behind this, like what got this started in St. Martin, this whole thing. It's also east of the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, so that's where this is located. So in studio
the other thing that would be fascinating would be if some of the countries that use dollars as their primary currency defected from dollars to some kind of crypto, because it makes more sense.
That's what El Salvador did when they began accepting Bitcoin as legal tender.
Oh, they have a dollar economy?
They do.
Interesting.
Yeah,
They did.
Well, they still do.
Now they have a dual economy.
Correct. Which was it's a really interesting move what they did there. And we can get into El Salvador here in just a moment. But it is Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio. First, we go to Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, Sarah.
Oh, God.
Oh, yes. Am I always have to get off the. Am I on the
You're fine.
speakerphone?
You sound loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that it turns out Albuquerque, New Mexico is like the worst place again for allergies. Yeah. So
For what?
it's a
Allergies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, allergies. I'm talking about anything non-political today. It's allergy season right now. So the desert climate, it's so dry. Everything's so dusty, and it's windy most of the time. So the pollens are just crazy. So we got juniper, cottonwood, mulberry, and I don't know how many other
Have you
trees.
considered moving to, say, North Korea to get away from all of the allergies there?
Well, it's okay. This is a pretty democratic, this is a very almost communist-like state. We're
Yeah,
gonna
I've
have
heard that
free
it's really
college.
bad there in New Mexico. We actually had a guy on the show last night, Laser, who is the brother of Alu Axelman. They were both on with us, with me last night on the program, and he had spent some time there in New Mexico, and he had just nothing good to say about the place at all. Just absolutely terrible.
I mean, it's
economy
not.
and everything.
It's not really like communism in New Mexico because nobody's starving to death there.
Yeah, probably true.
But you know what? We just have implemented a communist program. We're going to have free education, free college. Our governor signed it, and we
You
still
do know
have
there's
the
no such thing
universal-
as a free lunch, right? Like, you can't get free education. The money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but the students, I don't think they have to pay. They have to maintain
So who is
a
paying?
fee average.
People who don't go to school.
You understand that those students are eventually going to be paying it back through increased taxes, right?
Well, that's communism.
Well, not if
That's
they
what I'm
not if
telling
they
you.
get their education and leave.
Well, if they're
the
smart and
state.
they leave, they probably won't be. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's going to put them into poverty later on after they get that education.
But the thing is that our state, believe it or not, it didn't make the news, but our governors that were the only state that started this. I'm really proud of that. This is a very blue, socialist, democratic state.
I
So
hope
don't know
more
what-
of our socialists move down to New Mexico from New Hampshire. I think that they should go down there. It's nice and warm, and there's plenty of commies like Sarah down there. You guys will feel great if you're a socialist in New Hampshire. Head on down. You don't have to stop in Massachusetts. You can go all the way.
And there's great weather down there.
That
Exactly.
I think is a great idea, Ian.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Sarah. Appreciate it. The number is 603-283-6160. But don't go to St. Martin if you're a socialist, because it sounds like they've got a good thing going on there with a relatively free economy if they're going to actually start encouraging people to use Bitcoin Cash in transactions. Now, actually, according to the story I've got here, Chris, over at news.bitcoin.com, they link to the Bitcoin.com map. And so there's a few of these like crypto maps out there. The oldest one that I am aware of is called CoinMap. It's coinmap.org.
Right.
And that's a good one. It's been around for a long time. It's also highly out of date because it's been around for so long. So it's one of those things where somebody will add their business to the map in 2014 and then they'll go out of business. Of course, they won't ever remove their business from the map. So if you ever audit a city, you'll find there's a lot of stuff that's not even there anymore.
See, if you're doing a business like that, you should really require renewals.
Yeah, every year or something like that. Actually, who was it that was? It was Liberty Menu was doing renewal requirements, which I thought was a really smart move.
Yeah, it makes
on their
sense.
part. But Bitcoin.com has their own map. It's map.bitcoin.com. Now, with Bitcoin.com's map, they're only showing places that accept Bitcoin Cash. So if there's somebody that accepts Dash or Bitcoin BTC, that's not going to show per se on this map. But apparently, St. Martin's being right next door to St. Kitts and Nevis, both of those islands, I guess St. Kitts and Nevis are two islands, but St. Martin's has around 120 plus locations, about 128, and St. Kitts and Nevis also have about 128. So there's hundreds of places. Like, Keene is getting its ass kicked at this point compared to these other locations. It's incredible.
If in fact those locations are not like, kind of faked as far as crypto acceptance goes, because well, I mean, I recall a time when you were in Arizona, no, not Arizona, Texas, and you couldn't find any, even though there was plenty of places on the map to get food and things, you couldn't find any place that actually would sell you food for crypto.
Well, true, but I was using CoinMap at that time, and that was a few years ago.
Yep.
So I suspect that if Roger Ver is behind this and whoever his friends are down there, they're probably doing a pretty good job of making sure. I would hope that they're not just recruiting a business and then never coming back to it, because that is a for sure way to make
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Make it stale. Yeah, it's a good question. It would be interesting for somebody to go down there and audit the island and actually take a week. Like if you're going to go down to St. Kitts or Nevis or St. Martin's, spend a good week or two there and just start going across the whole island and just make a experience out of it. I want to go to every single place that takes Bitcoin Cash and see if I can actually spend Bitcoin Cash. See if they, number one, actually accept it. Number two, if the employee actually knows how to do it, because that's another important thing. Right? Like the boss may have agreed to take it, but have they told their employees? These are things we've come across here in Keene, New Hampshire. It's not always. They're not really Johnny on the spot in a lot of cases of educating new employees on how to take crypto.
Definitely not. It's not been too bad here because we're really good about. I mean, there's actually people spending crypto here.
Yeah.
But it's every once in a while you'll run into somebody new, at least, who hasn't yet been shown how to take it, and usually they're pretty new. So
coming up here, we're going to get deeper into the story from St. Martin about, are they going to become the crypto capital of the Caribbean by making some sort of official move towards having Bitcoin Cash be a legal tender? At least that's the impression I'm getting from this. We're going to find out more about the story coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. If you've actually been down to these places, would love to hear from you. I saw something on social media that one of the guys who has been investigating El Salvador, he's been down there and, he wanted to test it out, right? And found out there was a lot of BS, a lot of stuff that wasn't what it seemed in El Salvador. I think he might have made the trip to the island, so I'm going to see if I can pull up his account, because he's been paying attention to this. And apparently the Bitcoin maximalists are pissed about this potential legalization of Bitcoin Cash. So we'll dig into this more coming up here. This is Free Talk Live.
Poor monopolists.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agorist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agoristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agorist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agoristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agoristhosting.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nobody, and Chris on the show with you tonight. And we're talking about a very interesting development in the world of cryptocurrency. And that is that there's an island called St. Martin in the Caribbean that is now looking to possibly be the crypto capital of the Caribbean. And they might even be the crypto capital of the world. I mean, I haven't done the math yet to see if Keene, New Hampshire is beating St. Martin as far as, because we've for a long time claimed that Keene is one of the top. I've never said the top.
I don't know about the world, but the United States.
In the United States, Keene may still be the top.
Yeah,
there's a good chance of that. But on the world scene, we're definitely careful there. We're definitely one of the biggest as far as per capita acceptance of businesses accepting cryptocurrency. But St. Martin is killing it, apparently, with over 120 locations, according to map.bitcoin.com, that are taking crypto. And I did find Mark Falzon. His name is spelled MarkFalzon. He's the guy who called our show a few months ago to report on what his experience was in El Salvador and finding out that there's some real problems with their Bitcoin legal tender rollout situation there. And he also went to St. Martin, and he's actually made a 24-minute documentary about how this happened. And so I'm interested in seeing more about this. We're going to learn more about it, and maybe we'll share some of this audio with you here if it's appropriate. But let's dig in further, Chris, to the story that you brought in tonight. This is from I forget what the website was, but it's being reported in a few different places. I think news.bitcoin.com probably has it.
Yeah, something
well.
like
websites u.today.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. A much-needed adoption boost. Bitcoin Cash, which was once the biggest cryptocurrency, one of the biggest cryptocurrencies by market cap, slowly slipped into irrelevance during the 2021 bull run, failing to gain any traction to catch up with the old-timers. It never really took off in the first place, at least not. I mean, it took off, but it didn't.
Bitcoin Cash has been in the top 5.
Yeah, but by comparison to Bitcoin, it was never like it didn't sit side by side with it as far as market cap.
Well, there actually was a one time, and it wasn't quite side by side, but shortly after Bitcoin Cash came out, I believe it shot up to around 40-something% of a Bitcoin.
Was it that high at one point?
Not for very long. And then now it's less than 1% of a Bitcoin.
Yeah. That's kind of what I figured.
It's currently at number 25 on the market cap ranking, so it's slid quite a ways down.
Yeah, I believe it. The price of Bitcoin Cash has gone up 20% over the past week, outperforming every major altcoin, save for Avalanche. The controversial Bitcoin fork is down a staggering 91% from its record peak of $3,785, which was recorded all the way back in December of 2017. It is currently...
I don't think that peak was really reached. If I recall correctly, that was reported due to a glitch at Coinbase.
No, I suspect that was real because there was one time when it was the 2017 run up when everything was running up in 2017. Dash hit like $1,500 and now Dash is like a tenth of that, and now Bitcoin Cash is like a tenth.
There was a glitch somewhere about one crypto at one point, although I don't know if it was Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, there was a Bitcoin Cash glitch on Coinbase when they first started trading in it. It was the first day they rolled it out, and it spiked up to something crazy. And then they were like, oh, yeah, that was just a glitch, and it went back down.
So it's currently changing hands at $338 on spot exchanges. So... yeah, so basically Ethereum co-founder is basically attacking it and admitted that Bitcoin Cash was mostly a failure after calling it a legitimate contender for the Bitcoin name back in 2017. Yeah, you know what's interesting is I don't think you can call it a failure necessarily just because it didn't do as well as people...
is it being used? Because if it's being used, then it's not a failure.
And that's the thing. I think people have this idea that market cap is what matters, and market cap doesn't really matter that much. It's whether or not it's useful to the people who possess it, right? If it's useful to conduct transactions, then it's
useful.
Yeah, right.
It's going to stick around.
And that's true, especially when you're thinking about buying a new currency, because market cap is the current price times a constant. So and that constant is the 21 million coins that will eventually be released from all of the Bitcoin clones.
It's times whatever the
whatever
amount
percentage
of that
is actually out. But if you're buying Bitcoin Cash at a given price or buying Bitcoin at a much higher price, and they're headed to the same place, which I think eventually they will be headed to the same place in terms of market cap, you're going to make a lot more money off Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just a question of when you get there.
What I look at is to see whether or not something's been successful is, has a cryptocurrency, can I spend it? Are people asking to pay me in it? Things like that. And there's certain cryptocurrencies that's definitely the case with, like Monero and Bitcoin Cash and a little bit of Dash and Bitcoin.
Just a dash of Dash.
But yeah, I mean, most of these other cryptocurrencies, I'll have somebody ask once in a while for something obscure, but most of them are very, very rare that somebody wants to pay in.
Well, most of the rest of them are almost all completely speculative and just technology related. If you look at the top 25 on CoinMarketCap, there's a lot of these things that are not being used. Almost all of them are not being used in commerce in any sort of significant manner. Some of them are being used in programming. Some of them are being used in speculation, and that's about it. And there's a few of them that are stable coins.
Yeah.
So what else? Is there more to this story, or is this just a quick blurb about this guy's going to put a bill forward to?
Yeah, we covered it between what you have already covered in the other story and this one, so there wasn't a whole lot. It is interesting, though, I think, that St. Martin may be getting a bill here. And I don't know if it's going to pass, but it sounds like there is some amount of adoption in St. Martin for Bitcoin Cash already.
Well, I'm definitely now following this particular politician on social media, Rolando Bryson, on Twitter, and we're just going to keep an eye on this for sure.
What's the population of St. Martin?
That's an excellent question. I have not looked at that at the moment, but if one of y'all wants to look it up, feel free. There's a little bit here at news.bitcoin.com that I'll share about this, and this is a statement from Bryson, the guy that we're talking about here. This is the leader of the United People's Party in St. Martin. Quote, "Today I become the first official in the world, the first elected official in the world to have his entire salary paid in Bitcoin Cash, as our country moves more and more to making use of cryptocurrency and blockchain. thanks Roger Ver for the guidance in making St. Martin the crypto capital of the Caribbean. So yes, It is Roger Ver who is behind this. But I have to wonder. I would hope that Roger Ver has more than just Roger Ver on the ground in St. Martin, right? Like, you got to have more than one guy going around spending crypto.
76,000 people.
Even Jesus had 12 disciples.
Yeah, 76,000 people is roughly the population of St. Martin.
Okay, so they are doing better than Keene, because Keene's got about
23,000. So
right, and we've only got about 20 businesses on our sheet, and they've got over 100 and something.
Well,
so
that's
more per capita.
That's like brick and mortar businesses.
That's what we're talking about here.
Okay,
we're coming up here. 603-283-6160.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the US Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail?
Earlier today, he unveiled a new energy partnership deal with the European Union in a bid to reduce the bloc's dependence on Russian gas. The Ukrainians claimed today that 300 civilians, mostly women and children, were killed when the Russians shelled a theatre in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol earlier this month. The UN says it's received information about mass graves in Mariupol. Also today, the Biden administration's national security advisor pledged that the United States will never use chemical weapons, correcting President Biden, who said yesterday that a Russian chemical attack in Ukraine would elicit a response in kind. In other news, beleaguered British ferry operator P&O says its services will not be running for the next few days. The announcement came after the British government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO after he fired 800 staff without warning or consultation last week. And US Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been discharged from hospital after spending several days suffering from what the court is calling flu-like symptoms. He is yet to comment on the revelation that his wife played an active role trying to overturn the outcome of America's 2020 presidential election. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever's on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about this little race between certain areas of the planet to become the most cryptocurrency friendly, the most crypto accepting places in the world. I think this is a good set of competition to be having. Of course, we've got New Hampshire, which is definitely outstanding. Keene, New Hampshire, and Portsmouth are kind of the two king and queen capital cities, if you will, of the Shire.
New Hampshire as a whole is pretty amazing.
It's kind of weak outside of Keene and Portsmouth if you look at the coin map.
I will give you that in terms of brick and mortar businesses, but as far as at least amongst those who I interact with, it's
amongst the free staters, yeah. I mean, almost everyone's going to take cryptocurrency. So yeah, if you got a free stater who's cutting your lawn or something like that, there's a good chance they're going to take crypto. So there is that. There's an amazing community of crypto people here, but there's nothing that can really substitute for having local businesses with a sign on the door, with a sticker on the door that says Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Dash accepted here, or all three of them accepted here.
I definitely think you need a combination of people cutting your grass, taking it, as well as brick and mortar,
because it all is important to the crypto economy. And so that's something we've got here that I want to know more about what's going on in St. Martin. So I did send an email out to Roger Ver.
Wow, that was fast.
Well, I know his email, and he gets a lot of emails, but he'll probably get back to me at some point, inviting him on the show since his name was mentioned here as one of the prime movers behind this St. Martin's, which one of y'all checked the population was 76,000 people in St. Martin's.
Wow.
So pretty small population.
Tiny.
I imagine they get a lot more in visitors over a year.
About the size of Cheshire County. So the county that we're in Keene.
Right. And so they're focused on Bitcoin Cash, which is great. There's no doubt about it. I got to say, I like multi-crypto as an option. I like that when you go into a business in downtown Keene, you can pay with Bitcoin if you want. You can pay with Dash. You can pay with Bitcoin Cash. Although I hear that there's some technical difficulties with AnyPay these days.
It's
unfortunately.
not entirely down. It's actually up. It's just that if you're using the Edge wallet and you've updated to the latest release, it's not working. But good news is that it is going. There's a new version coming out of Edge Wallet, and a patch has been accepted.
So
it should be resolved shortly. And you can always downgrade Edge Wallet. Or you can switch to like Bitcoin.com, which is a Bitcoin Cash wallet as well, or some other wallet that supports the Pay protocol and still pay with AnyPay.
It's definitely true that having a singular crypto makes things simple, right? Because then you only take Bitcoin Cash. That's the end of the story. But it is nice to give people options and nice to allow the customer to choose what they want to pay with. So it'd be nice to see that happening down there. But that again, I can't knock what they're doing. They're doing amazing work down there. If they've got over 120 businesses on just this one little island taking Bitcoin Cash point of sale, it's incredible.
I would not be complaining.
No, it's an incredible success story. In fact, I wonder if that makes them the number one spot in the world. I remember there was somewhere
they got 100 businesses with only 76,000 people.
Yeah, that's got to be it. They have to be number one.
That's more than one business for every 1,000 people.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
That's actually kind of hard to believe.
There was a place in Europe, and I forget where it was, but the Ledger people that came here to do the story on the Crypto 6.
Yeah.
If you go to the Ledger channel on YouTube and you look prior to the Crypto 6 episode, I think the Crypto 6 Ledger piece is up on the Crypto6.com, isn't it? I think it is.
For the Crypto 6, absolutely, yeah.
So if you click into that and then you go into their channel and you look previously, there's one for this Bitcoin Cash city, basically in Europe, and I don't remember where it was, but they did a piece on that, or maybe it was Bitcoin. Anyway, one of those. There was a pretty big, but the city itself was fairly large, so I'm pretty sure they're not even coming. I was impressed with the number that they had, and they're probably the top place in Europe. But I don't think anything's beating St. Martin and St. Kitts right now. It's just amazing. So a little bit more here about this from news.bitcoin.com. Again, they're interviewing the very first. He claims to be the very first elected official to accept his entire paycheck in cryptocurrency. And some people may be quibbling with us. Oh, what about the New York City mayor? No.
He's only taking half of it, isn't he?
The New York City mayor said he would only take his first few paychecks
Right.
And then I guess he's going back to dollars.
Yeah.
So this guy's saying he's getting paid his entire salary in Bitcoin Cash. During the announcement that he has made, as he's intending to make some sort of legislation to make it a legal tender. So during a conference last year, St. Martin's finance minister said crypto and blockchain adoption was a priority area to research. Bryson remarked that he appreciated the finance minister's ideas of moving toward innovation. The UP party leaders said that the next important step was to introduce cryptocurrency and blockchain legislation. Quote, while we need to improve our legacy forms of commercial banking by means of my proposed consumer banking legislation, we simultaneously need to create legislation to make cryptocurrency transactions even more effective and worthwhile in St. Martin, he explained. Now, I hope they don't go down the same road as El Salvador. And here's what they did in El Salvador that was a huge mistake. They put in a mandate in their legal tender law. Now, the president of the country kind of backpedaled on this publicly, the president of El Salvador, and he made statements saying, oh, no, it's not going to be mandated. But the law itself has it in there. It's part of the actual wording of the statute.
Yeah.
And so just because the current president may not be enforcing that mandate doesn't mean the next one won't. So I think that's a really bad thing, number one. It leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths when they hear that. And then the other really bad thing was the government made a wallet.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know what happens when governments try technology-related things, right?
Yeah, you get the Obamacare website.
Yeah. You get garbage.
Yeah.
You get a broken piece of garbage that even though the government gang themselves, they weren't the programmers, obviously. They hired a company to do that programming. It was still a disaster from top to bottom, including the fact that, and this was according to Mark Falzon, who is also now reporting on St. Martin, but he's the guy that called us about El Salvador. You couldn't do transactions for less than $5 on the government Bitcoin app.
Which basically means most transactions probably can't happen.
Can't happen.
Yeah.
Right. Again, how are you going to buy a taco or whatever on the streets for $1 with Bitcoin if the official government app won't let you do it at all? Like, you can't even try to pay for less than $5 on that app.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. Maybe because the fees are just so shockingly high at such a, at those low levels or whatever.
Wow.
And I didn't even think it was actually holding it in Bitcoin, though. Like, wasn't it basically just you could spend it, and then it would get converted to Bitcoin, sort of?
No, it's a Bitcoin app, but it's a custodial app. So it's another
which
problem
means that there's not actual transactions.
God.
You're not actually making
it's not a real Bitcoin transaction.
Yeah, you're not making a real Bitcoin transaction every time you spend some of your supposed Bitcoin.
Not from the government wallet.
In Bitcoin, because the government doesn't have to, the custodial, the company that or whoever is running it doesn't actually have to make a transaction in Bitcoin.
Correct. It's the illusion of Bitcoin rather than real Bitcoin. So it's been a real mess, and it's actually created a sort of a protest movement. There's actually people who are now anti-Bitcoin simply because the government has been shoving it down people's throats in El Salvador. So I hope, and given that Roger Ver has bent the ear of this guy, and Roger is an actual principled voluntarist, liberty-loving anarchist kind of character, I suspect he is going to warn them against this. I suspect.
I hope so.
That this could go, if this goes in the right direction, St. Martin's will be primed to absolutely be the cryptocurrency capital, not just of the Caribbean, as they're saying, but of the planet. And that's pretty exciting. So we'll continue here, and you can share your thoughts. We'll get into El Salvador because there's a really interesting kind of half-year retrospective. They started this back in September, having Bitcoin be the official legal tender, or one of two, because there's the dollar and there's Bitcoin. And well, how's that gone? We'll look at it coming up here in moments, and your calls and thoughts are welcome. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized. which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
So we're going to talk more about the acceptance of cryptocurrency going global, with multiple countries now looking at accepting or having a legal tender law include Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. There was a story earlier this week about Honduras talking about this. Then the central bank came out and said, no, we're not doing that. But apparently the president of the country was saying nice things about cryptocurrency. So it's not really clear what, if anything's happening in Honduras. Of course, they're right next door to El Salvador. So all in that kind of same area. And then you've got St. Martin, which is arguably the number one place on the planet for local businesses accepting cryptocurrency. Definitely want to learn more about that and how it happened. I was just watching a video from Mark Falzon, Marcfalzon, on his YouTube channel. 24-minute long documentary. I've not watched the whole thing yet, but Roger Ver has made an appearance in this video, and so he's definitely highly involved there. And there seems to be at least a handful of doers that are on the ground there that are helping these business owners and helping people on board into taking cryptocurrency. They've even got a billboard in, I presume, the capital city. There's an animated, billboard with promoting Bitcoin Cash, which is pretty awesome. So we're going to learn more about this as time goes on. But first, we go to Major Payne. You're on the line in Michigan with Ian, Nobody, and Chris.
Hey, Nobody, Ian, Chris. How y'all doing tonight?
Major, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm going to go on a piss and rant about the union.
No, okay.
Because the government and the teachers union have become the biggest unions in the country, but they're hiding behind bloody cloaks that they have not earned. The unions were earned in the 30s by the auto industry and the steel workers on strike, getting their heads split by railroad bulls and such. I mean, there's blood and guts put into making the union. And it was in a time where the poor man, the little guy, just wasn't getting his fair shake. But now these, all these government jamokes and these teachers, they're hiding behind a bloody cloak that they have not earned, and it really POs me.
Okay.
So
Well,
would you
what do
feel
you
better
think?
if somebody went out and beat up some teachers?
No, dude, that's there's probably some teachers that need a little tune-up, but that's not my forte. They should not be able to be unionized. Would be my point. They should not have protection.
I agree. There should be no government unions.
Yeah,
I agree there.
And not doing their job.
Yeah, I think the best solution is I'm not against unions per se, but I am
Neither
certainly
am I.
against the government's interfering with the free market, and that's basically how the unions work right now. What we should do is we should dissolve the public school systems, dissolve the government school systems, and let the free market take care of reduce the costs of education. And improve the quality and so forth, and the people who want the best education will end up getting the best education because they'll compete for the best schools.
Yeah, these government unions, government workers unions are the worst of the worst because we're all forced to pay for them, and they get themselves so embedded into the system. It's almost impossible to undo it once the government union has been created. They're just so in charge and so in control. Whereas if you don't like what a union at Starbucks is doing or wherever, you can just not shop there. But with the state, you are forced to use their, to at the very least pay for their services.
And the humorous thing is the unions have actually run themselves out of business in many cases by increasing the costs of the business, and thus, basically companies shutting down operations in the United States and going out overseas elsewhere where it's cheaper.
Yeah,
Well, it wasn't that long ago. About every 5 miles or so, there was a little schoolhouse that the kids could actually make it to.
Not in my lifetime, but
hell or high water. and there, but the thing is, there was a local school marm that was accountable to the community. Right?
What are you going to say there, Nobody, about the unions?
We had oversight.
I don't remember.
Major, thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate it. The number is 603-283-6160. Yeah, you're not going to get oversight of the government system. It's completely out of control. Even the local school boards are almost impossible to rein in, although there was a headline recently. I don't know if y'all heard about it. Croydon, New Hampshire. One of the Free Staters there, Ian Underwood, had made a proposal. He's one of the guys that's the founders of Bardo Farm, which is they take cryptocurrency and goldbacks, I believe, over at Bardo Farm. But he made a proposal to cut the school budget in half, and it passed.
Wait, how did he get that? I'm sorry, but I want to know what are they doing? I'm speechless. What
are you confused about?
How is that even possible?
Well, he made a proposal through the process, which requires usually, I think, 25 signatures. in order to get a thing on the town ballot.
We can't even get something on the town ballot in Keene, let alone to pass.
Well, Keene's a city.
Yeah, Keene and Croydon are different.
I understand
Croydon
that.
is a town, which means that it's ruled by town meeting, which is very different from
the process
a
is
city,
different.
which is more professionalized. And
that said, the Keene School Board is more of a town system, and so you can make proposals to the Keene School Board in the same way. So Conan, our Tuesday night co-host here, has done this in Keene in previous years. He hasn't done it in a few years, but back in the old days, we used to actually go to the Keene School Board meetings.
Been to a couple of them?
Yeah, and so you saw what they did to Conan's proposals. They gutted them.
Which is exactly what I'm talking about.
Them.
And I know that wasn't the first. I've seen him do it a couple times, I think, and it wasn't the first time like that he's done that. He's tried a couple of times prior to me even.
Well,
being
Keene ain't
in New
Croydon.
Hampshire.
I mean, Croydon is a completely different place.
Wow.
Croydon was one of the first places, I think, where they started doing like vouchers or whatever. So Ian was able to create a flyer using some statistics or whatever, and showed the insane level of spending of the government schools and how the test scores were just completely flat. So he made a nice little visual, and he handed those flyers out to every single person that came to the school board meeting, and they voted for his thing.
Now, I want to know, how is the school going to respond? Like, how are they going to deal with that, right? Like, if your budget's cut in half, presumably you don't have the money to pay the teachers and
fire them.
So are the numbers going to go up? Like the student
Who
ratio?
Knows? Actually, apparently the numbers are down as far as like the numbers of students at the school, because people are taking their kids out of government school and homeschooling them.
Right.
Does it affect the voucher system? I mean, is that the idea that the government school has less budget, so take your voucher and put your kid in private school?
It's an interesting question. There is something that the state got through, I think it was in 2021, fairly recently, called the education savings accounts. And this allows, as I understand it, I have a rudimentary understanding of it. I don't have kids, right? So I've just heard some discussions about it. But it allows parents to opt into this educational savings account thing, and then they get like $4,000 or $5,000 in a check, basically, from the state, or some sort of payment from the state that they can then use to buy either a private school scholarship, or they can buy homeschooling materials.
My understanding is that comes from the school district that pays for the schools, right?
No, it comes from the state.
But isn't it something like it goes to the state, but it's managed by the state, but it's paid for by the school district?
I don't know about that. I'm not sure.
I thought that's how it was, and I'm just hearing. This is just what I'm hearing too. So my memory could be faulty, or I could have been told it wrong too. So unfortunately, we're speculating here because none of us have kids.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that if you want, you can learn more about the New Hampshire Educational Savings Accounts. They got a really nice website that goes over it and explains everything. The Democrats tried to shut this program down, by the way, a couple weeks ago with legislation, and that failed. Good. The program is ongoing, and they have maxed out, by the way. They filled up the total amount of budget that they'd had for this educational savings account. So there's a huge demand for parents to get their kids out of government school, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't even know why we brought that. What led us to even talk about the school budgets in the first place? But
I do not know.
But that happened. So kudos to the activists here in New Hampshire for, again, it was one activist that made that happen.
That's amazing.
In a small town. He convinced his neighbors that cutting the school budget by half was a good plan. So it can be done.
It's crazy because I remember in New Jersey, you couldn't even get them to maintain their budget, and let alone have it go down.
Oh yeah, it goes up every year here in Keene.
I can't even fathom. How do you cut a budget? If you can't even cut a budget by 2%, how did you get it cut by 50%?
No, they laughed us out of the room when we tried to cut it by 5% here in Keene.
Right. This just blows my mind.
Yeah. It's all about numbers. It's all about persuasion, and it can be done. So that's proof
And
of concept.
Keene is the worst town in New Hampshire.
It's one of the top, probably 3 worst towns for sure. Nashua ain't great either.
Yeah, Nashua's pretty Massachusetts-y.
Yeah, they call it North Boston for a reason. And their mask mandate was even more tyrannical than the one that happened in Keene. More coming up here. You can share your thoughts with us. We'll get into El Salvador's Bitcoin experiment coming up. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the U.S. Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail?
Earlier today, he unveiled a new energy partnership deal with the European Union in a bid to reduce the bloc's dependence on Russian gas. The Ukrainians claimed today that 300 civilians, mostly women and children, were killed when the Russians shelled a theatre in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol earlier this month. The UN says it's received information about mass graves in Mariupol. Also today, the Biden administration's national security advisor pledged that the United States will never use chemical weapons, correcting President Biden, who said yesterday that a Russian chemical attack in Ukraine would elicit a response in kind. In other news, beleaguered British ferry operator P&O says its services will not be running for the next few days. The announcement came after the British government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO after he fired 800 staff without warning or consultation last week. And US Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been discharged from hospital after spending several days suffering from what the court is calling flu-like symptoms. He is yet to comment on the revelation that his wife played an active role trying to overturn the outcome of America's 2020 presidential election. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We are at the end of a month now of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and yesterday President Biden, European and NATO leaders all insisted the West is more united than ever and more determined to beat back Russia's aggression, if necessary, over the long term. But is that correct? Richard Ensor, Ukraine correspondent for The Economist, is in the western city of Lviv.
The fortitude and the unity shown not just within Ukraine but around the world has made it possible to resist this Russian imperialist war of territorial conquest, and that unity needs to be maintained not just for 1 month, but for the duration of the war. And of course, the big risk is that this coalition abroad starts to fray, and the willingness to feel a little bit of heat in order to sanction Russia and to break off the economic ties that have been built with Russia over the years, that starts to become a little bit more complicated when European countries like Hungary and Germany get cold feet. At some point, something else somewhere in the world is going to blow up. There's going to be another crisis. And then when Ukraine isn't the only ball in the air, that's when you get the real test of political will, when you don't have the eyes of the entire world on the crisis in Ukraine. And that's when the politics of this situation start to get very vexing.
And there is another crisis brewing in the Korean peninsula, where North Korea test-fired another intercontinental ballistic missile only this week. The main news again, US officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk in the east. And beleaguered British ferry operator P&O is suspending all services for the next few days. The announcement came after the government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Several weeks after the car accident that resulted in the death of his longtime friend Matthew Abrams, local man Keith Bisbee told Onion reporters today that he isn't sure how much longer he should continue using the photo of his deceased friend as his profile picture on Facebook.
People can't really expect me to keep this up forever, right?
Bisbee told reporters he felt like he had done more than his part to preserve the young man's memory. Bisbee added, however, that he had no idea when to go about changing his profile picture.
I'm pretty sure nobody would judge me if I went ahead and changed the photo right now. Matt wouldn't expect me to still have a picture of him up. I mean, I wouldn't expect that of him. You know, I should just do it. Maybe I can go online later tonight when nobody's on. But his girlfriend gets home late from work. I don't really want to seem disrespectful. Maybe I could do it tomorrow morning, or...
At this time, Bisbee has reluctantly changed his profile picture to an image of a gay rights equal sign and is, quote, just waiting to see what happens next.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones open if you want to join the show. You can. Here, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. We're talking about different areas of the world and acceptance of cryptocurrency and different approaches to this. So here in New Hampshire, we've got an amazing network of freedom-loving people who have migrated here, as the three of us have. We're all migrants. Mm-hmm. Chris, you came from New Jersey.
That's correct.
Nobody, I think, were you in Florida before you moved here, or Michigan?
I was in Florida. I went back to Michigan briefly before I came here.
And I was in Florida. So none of us knew each other prior to migrating here. So the fact that we have now thousands of people who have moved here for instance, the Free State Project, or some of them didn't even join the Free State Project. Many people just came here.
I'm actually surprised at how many people haven't joined this Free State Project.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so thousands of liberty-loving activists moved here, and many of them moved way prior to, I moved in 2006. Nobody, I think you came here 2008. If I recall correctly. So before crypto even became a thing, a lot of the Free Staters were here using things like silver to do exchanges, because we value the idea of getting away from the government money, the fiat money, which is essentially just a system to rob you.
And most of us still do exchanges in precious metal.
Yeah, I do a lot more now that I'm prohibited from using cryptocurrency. They didn't prohibit me from using gold. But
which is kind of funny because they took your gold.
They sure did. But anyway, so we're talking about the Crypto 6 case there. If you want to learn more about that, go to thecrypto6.com, but that's not the focus here. So here in New Hampshire, we've got an amazing community of freedom lovers that are accepting cryptocurrency. They're accepting gold backs and silver and other things like that. And that is unbeatable. There's just nothing like that anywhere on the planet. However, some places have some really killer crypto activists, like we're learning here at St. Martin, which is an island in the Caribbean, might be the top location on the planet for local businesses accepting cryptocurrency voluntarily. Now, there's another place on the planet, El Salvador, that made a lot of headlines last year when the president of El Salvador, who's this like 40-year-old guy that wears a backwards baseball cap, he's like Mr. Cool president guy, but he's also, of course, a dictator. He announced that El Salvador was going to become the first country on the planet to make Bitcoin legal tender. And well, there was a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. The right way to do it would simply be to proclaim it and to say, all right, Bitcoin's now legal tender. Have at it, Yeah. And the wrong way to do it was the way they did it.
Not in the sense that, because a lot of people think legal tender means you have to accept it.
Yeah.
And that's not the sense in which you're using the term.
True.
You're just saying, basically, we're not going to tax you going into crypto, and we're not going to tax you coming out of crypto.
I mean, does it even mean that, technically?
Well, legal tender does tend to mean that it is mandatory to accept for debts, at least in the United States. That's the terminology. Yeah. But if you don't have a debt with somebody, then you don't have to pay them in dollars. You can pay them, for whatever they're asking. But I want to jump into this story here about this. So they did it the wrong way. They did it the mandatory way. And now the president of the country has sort of walked that back by saying, well, we're not going to enforce that aspect of the law. But it's in there. And a lot of the corporations have jumped the hoops. So you can go to McDonald's in El Salvador and you can pay with Bitcoin. So that has happened. Now, a lot of the other people, the individuals, the mom and pop businesses, not so much. And there's a story here from restofworld.com. It's all about this, looking back at the last now basically 6 or 7 months of this experiment in El Salvador. So I'm going to jump into this here. So when El Salvador officially made Bitcoin legal tender in September of 2021, Jose Bonilla was one of the first citizens to sign up for a government-backed digital wallet that lets anyone use a cryptocurrency. The 23-year-old Salvadoran who runs a shoe store with his family in the tourist town of Concepcion de Ataco was looking forward to trying out the technology. He'd heard that it would reduce costs and speed up payments. After a few days of overcoming technical glitches, Bonilla was up and running and accepting payments in Bitcoin from customers. But the shine soon wore off. By February of this year, Bonilla's list of complaints about Bitcoin was long. The only available Bitcoin ATM was too far away. The government helpline was slow. And the price, too volatile. One day he lost a $25 transaction from a customer due to technical issues and never heard back from the Digital Wallet's customer service team. He said, I decided not to use it anymore.
Wow.
And he's not the only one. 6 months since El Salvador's Bitcoin law came into effect, adoption of the cryptocurrency remains patchy. Even on Bitcoin Beach, a rugged strip of Salvadoran coastline that has become a mecca for crypto disciples, the transition has been challenging. When rest of the world visited shortly after the law came into force, some were still unsure about Bitcoin. Coconut vendor Dina Ponce said she was able to make more sales by expanding to accept digital payments for the first time, but she didn't fully understand the technology and the value of Bitcoin hadn't risen enough to give her the savings she'd hoped for. Other businesses around Bitcoin Beach said they'd given up on Bitcoin and reverted to accepting only cash. Quote, we were losing money because of the way the currency loses value, said 21-year-old Axel Medina, who helps his family run a surf school and restaurant. It was difficult to maintain our business like that. Now, obviously, these objections that you're hearing from these folks are people who don't fully understand or have any real grasp of what they've gotten into.
No, they don't.
And that's one of the problems that comes in when, the government puts a gun to your head and says, okay, thou must accept. Okay, well, I have to do this now. They didn't take the time to actually learn about it. We know that the price of Bitcoin can go up and down, but these people had the experience of, guess what happened after El Salvador started accepting Bitcoin? the price went down.
Yeah.
And it started to go down until it finally hit,
Yeah, I mean, you got to play with it a little bit and understand it a little bit before you can really begin to get confident. And then over time, over enough time, if you keep accepting it and you keep using it, you understand the value in it.
Yeah.
Because you can see it. But in a very short term, if you get on board and it's in the middle, it's going down, and people are paying for you, it might seem like you're losing money, but it's not necessarily the case over the course of a longer period of time.
Yes, had they held on to it, they may have been very happy after a year or two or whatever. Yeah. But that doesn't help you make the rent payment that month.
Right. And this is why, if you're so desperate, right? If you were getting most of your sales in crypto, in Bitcoin, for example, you might have a problem.
But I doubt that was the majority.
That's not the case. Yeah. So it's not an issue.
They were able to walk away from it. So obviously it's a very small amount of their sales.
And not only that, but there are still some issues with cryptocurrencies that are not perfect, or at least the ones people are mostly using. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that there aren't cryptocurrencies that are more stable and don't have these huge swings in price.
That's true. That's true. There are other options.
It's one of these things where it might make sense to say have some Bitcoin or have some other crypto, but use a stable coin for acceptance or payments or whatever, and then you can choose what you. And I haven't.
Unfortunately, that would take some serious research, right? Somebody would have to learn about what a stable coin is, figure out which ones to accept,
and some of these things are problems mostly because the tools don't fully exist to make it straightforward and simple yet.
There's hardly any payment apps. I mean, AnyPay is one of them, but they don't have stable coins there. The Bitcoin Cash is another. They've got the Bitcoin Cash. There's a certain app called the Marketplace or something like that.
Like they say, we're still in the early days of crypto. It is becoming more widespread in spite of the hiccups. And I'm not surprised. And it's because there are people who are seeing and understanding the value, who have held it a while. And, as more people begin to understand it, you're going to see increasing growth. So
when Nayib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador, first announced the Bitcoin law in June of 2021, he made a grand promise to his citizens. Adopting Bitcoin, he said, would digitize the economy, decrease dependence on the U.S. dollar, lower remittance fees, which is absolutely true, which account for about 20% of the country's gross domestic product. So there's a lot of people they have family in, say, the United States, and they send money down to their relatives in El Salvador over things like Western Union and MoneyGram.
Yikes.
Right? And they're taking huge percentages.
Absolutely.
These remittances are very, very expensive. And if you can send Bitcoin down to your loved ones, and then they can walk to a Bitcoin vending machine or an ATM or two-way unit in the streets, and they do have these in El Salvador.
Or just spend it on tacos.
Yeah, this could be a huge game changer for people that are accepting remittances. They could get more of the remittance that their loved ones are trying to send to them. So I definitely agree with some of the reasons behind this, but the way they did this, more coming up.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money.
There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. We're talking about the Bitcoin experiment down in El Salvador, which has been a very interesting one. Those of us who believe in voluntary choice are not big fans of the way this thing was implemented. But that said, there are some lessons to be learned. There are some interesting stories to be told about what has happened in El Salvador in the last 6 or 7 months of their experiment, this brazen experiment that I do appreciate some of this, right? Like, I appreciate the fact that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, started threatening the El Salvadoran government over this, saying you need to undo this or else.
Yeah.
And the president of El Salvador responded by tweeting a Simpsons meme back at them and just basically blew them off. So
what was the Simpsons meme? Do you remember? What
I'll
it
have
said?
to see if I can dig it up for you. It was funny. It was pretty funny.
I'm still waiting for the president of El Salvador to be taken out by the U.S. government.
Well, they're not happy about it either. There's actually recent news just this week.
Yeah.
There was a bill that is being filed by the U.S. Senate or House or whatever, but one of them.
Yep.
And there's a bill that says they want the U.S. government to start writing reports like every month or something on what's happening with Bitcoin down in El Salvador because they believe it's a threat to the U.S. dollar. Yeah,
that's the whole point of Bitcoin from the very beginning.
So on the world scene, this has had some interesting waves. So I mean, I guess I support him in that area, like just him flipping the bird to the fiat. Like he'll post on his social media about how awful fiat is.
Yeah,
he will come straight out and say that. So I do value him for that, but I just don't appreciate the mandate.
Yeah, this is like one draconian government against another draconian government,
yes.
right?
Well, he's now positioning himself as this sort of leader of the free world, which of course is not true about El Salvador. It is not a free place. But that's what he's trying to act like. And anyway, that aside, Let's jump back into the story here from restofworld.org. They pointed out here that El Salvador could become the first country to prove the transformative power of cryptocurrency on a national scale. It's difficult to get a full picture of the scope of Bitcoin adoption in the country, however. In January, the government endorsed a report that at least 4 million users, which is nearly the entire population of the country, had been verified as authentic users of the government's wallet in the past several weeks. But in March, a survey released by the Chamber of Commerce and Industry reported that 86% of the businesses contacted said they had never conducted a transaction using Bitcoin. Interviews with dozens of Salvadoran citizens, economists, and technology developers reveal cracks in the project. Since launching, the initiative has been plagued with technical glitches, while tensions have arisen from the mismatch between Bitcoin's decentralized ethos and El Salvador's authoritarian government. As Bukele continues to double down on Bitcoin, his interest now appears to be less about getting everyday Salvadorans to accept the cryptocurrency and more about addressing his administration's economic troubles and boosting his own image.
If he can stick around a couple more years, I think his problems will be solved.
If the price of Bitcoin goes up in that time, it'll make him look pretty good. Alex Gladstein, the chief strategy officer for the Human Rights Foundation, said, "Why did he do this? Well, to me, it's kind of obvious. He did it for self-interest and to get famous." El Salvador's association with Bitcoin started in 2019 on Bitcoin Beach in the town of El Zonte. And that's where an evangelical surfer named Mike Peterson teamed up with a local resident, Jorge Valenzuela, to transform the small coastal town into a circular economy built around the cryptocurrency. Seeing potential for nationwide application, President Bukele announced his Bitcoin law at the cryptocurrency conference in Miami in June of 2021. The law made El Salvador the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender and required businesses to accept it as payment. Again, that's what the law says, but he says that won't be enforced.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with this is that when you and this happens all the time. This is not something exclusive to El Salvador. You know, you've got these politicians that will pass these laws, and then they won't enforce these laws, except they will enforce them when they want to put pressure on somebody, and they'll use them selectively.
Right.
And that's the danger of basically passing laws that nobody reads, or there's a lot of people who, they're just going unenforced. Yeah.
In El Salvador, Bukele proclaimed during the video speech at the conference, he says, "We're trying to start the design of a country for the future," unquote. To lay the groundwork for the transition, the government spearheaded development of technology that would make it possible for citizens to buy and sell using Bitcoin, including a digital wallet called Chivo, which literally means goat in Spanish, but is also slang in Salvadoran for cool. Users could use the Chivo wallet to reach or to receive or send cryptocurrency funds. Think Venmo or PayPal, but for Bitcoin. But here's the thing. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel.
Nope.
There were already, 50 different cryptocurrency wallets out there, all of them except Bitcoin, right? Like there's a ton of Bitcoin accepting wallets on the marketplace, and a lot of them have had development for many years.
And this is the thing. Like I could understand if they had some objective, right? Like they were trying to make it easier to use or streamlining something. I could kind of understand why they'd come out with their own wallet. That's not what happened. That's not the reason for this, clearly.
I'd really like to know what they were thinking when they decided to have their own wallet. I mean, there's got to be wallets that are in Spanish.
Central control. This is a custodial wallet, which means the owner of the keys that unlocks the Bitcoin is the government. It's not the individual who holds the wallet. So control, of course, was likely their primary goal, but they might say that ease of use was the reason. So the government has refused to provide details about the corporation that developed and owns this wallet, but the rest of world has interviewed some of the private firms involved with the rollout. A U.S.-based cryptocurrency company called Athena Bitcoin plays the largest role. They met with Athena Bitcoin CEO Eric Gravengard in his offices in San Benito, where he described how the company first got involved with the experiment. They were originally focused on building Bitcoin ATMs, which let their users exchange fiat for cryptocurrency or vice versa. In the U.S. in 2019, he, who knew about Bitcoin Beach through a mutual friend, offered to provide one of them for the project. He visited El Salvador in February of 2020, to help install the machine, which was El Zonte's first of any description, first ATM at all. Over the first following months, he fielded calls from people in El Salvador who told him they were driving to El Zonte, 50 kilometers away from San Salvador, just to use his ATM, so he decided to send a couple more. Those new ATMs were being processed in customs when President Bukele announced the Bitcoin law. Gravengard said the administration asked if the company wanted to do a ribbon-cutting ceremony and install more than 200 ATMs across El Salvador. These would later become Chivo-branded machines. Quote, "We came to El Salvador without a political agenda. We came here because we are Bitcoiners," he said. Or this was one of their directors. Soon, Athena also took on a bigger project, designing the front-end software for the Chivo wallet, as well as a point-of-sale system called Athena Pay that would allow the stores to accept Bitcoin. Actually, sending Bitcoin back and forth can be expensive and slow and requires a certain level of technical know-how. Athena's ATMs would be useless if the average Salvadoran didn't have a wallet that they could use to buy and sell Bitcoin in a fast and cost-effective manner. By December, 950 Athena Pay terminals had been installed and were in use across the country. So that's a pretty impressive rollout.
Yeah.
Right? Hundreds of ATMs in a country of a few million people. It makes Bitcoin, in theory, fairly accessible. What could go wrong? It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the US Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail?
Earlier today, he unveiled a new energy partnership deal with the European Union in a bid to reduce the bloc's dependence on Russian gas. The Ukrainians claimed today that 300 civilians, mostly women and children, were killed when the Russians shelled a theatre in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol earlier this month. The UN says it's received information about mass graves in Mariupol. Also today, the Biden administration's national security advisor pledged that the United States will never use chemical weapons, correcting President Biden, who said yesterday that a Russian chemical attack in Ukraine would elicit a response in kind. In other news, beleaguered British ferry operator P&O says its services will not be running for the next few days. The announcement came after the British government backed calls for the resignation of its CEO after he fired 800 staff without warning or consultation last week. And US Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been discharged from hospital after spending several days suffering from what the court is calling flu-like symptoms. He is yet to comment on the revelation that his wife played an active role trying to overturn the outcome of America's 2020 presidential election. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can join us here. Bring up whatever you want. Number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're sharing with you a interesting story about what has been happening in El Salvador ever since September of last year, when they sort of mandated that businesses have to accept Bitcoin. It's in the law, but it's supposedly not being enforced, at the very least on the mom and pop businesses out there, because it would be a real bad look. Like, it would look really bad if they started arresting a 70-year-old guy who doesn't even want a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Who just doesn't care about Bitcoin. So they haven't gone that far with it, but it's still been an absolute mess of a rollout, because they do have a government Bitcoin wallet that they hired a private company to design for them. Of course, you know, it's good that the government themselves didn't try to do it, but it's still an absolute mess. There have been huge problems. But they're kind of going into the history behind this situation. It's a company called Athena Bitcoin that actually is a Bitcoin ATM company. I've actually seen their name here in the United States. They have Bitcoin locations, Bitcoin ATM locations here. And they ended up having like 950 terminals set up by the end of the year last year across El Salvador. But as a lot of people ended up discovering, it was a bit of a mess to try using this wallet at all, the Chivo wallet, as it's called. So let me go on here with the story from restofworld.org. The amount paid to each company involved in the Chivo rollout is unknown. Reporting from Salvadoran and U.S. outlets estimates the government has spent upwards of millions of dollars on this. In September, when the Bitcoin law came into effect, Athena's stock price briefly shot up over 600%. The boss of Athena describes himself as a libertarian and sees no contradiction in El Salvador's Bitcoin ecosystem being controlled by the Bukele administration. He told Rest of World, money is social. At some point, says the article, as a participant in the economy, you have to cede some control and trust someone else, whether it is the developer of an app, a bank, or a government. He said, I don't particularly want to live in a world where I don't trust anyone. He said it's not a happy world.
I mean, there is one good thing about this is they're not mandating the Chivo app, and you can apparently use whatever app you want in order to make a payment.
Correct. They are incentivizing Chivo, however. They're giving, I believe, $30 worth of Bitcoin to any El Salvadoran who successfully sets the app up.
That's true.
And they do have to do some Know Your Customer. They have to ID themselves or whatever. But a Bitcoin adoption over the last 6 months has not gone smoothly, according to the story here. For one, El Salvador is a country where cash is king. Almost 70% of the population is unbanked. Critics say the country's Bitcoin transition leaves behind those who don't have a smartphone, mainly older Salvadorans, and those without internet access.
I mean, you know, this seems kind of manipulative to say it and phrase it like that, because ultimately, yes, there are some people who are not going to be able to be advantaged, gain something from this. Mm-hmm. But is that really a good reason to hurt everybody else?
They're not losing anything by it.
Yeah,
no, that's true.
Right.
In 2019, about 50% of the population was not online. Further, many El Salvadorans were clueless about Bitcoin when they found out their country planned to make it legal tender. One poll of about 1,300 of them by the Central American University leading up to the rollout showed only about 10% of respondents fully understood cryptocurrency. I don't know what they mean when they say fully understood.
Yeah. I don't know that I fully understand cryptocurrency.
I would be considered an expert And I don't fully understand crypto. But Alejandro Mullins, who works at Athena Bitcoin and whose job it is to get merchants to download and use the Chivo wallet, told Rest of World his own mother has yet to sign up for her Chivo wallet. Some of those who've signed up have complained of technical issues with the Chivo app, including accounts created through identity fraud, lost transactions, and receiving error codes when trying to make payments. And there's nothing more frustrating in a cryptocurrency transaction, or what would be a cryptocurrency transaction, than the failure of the wallet or the receiving end, or whatever, the failure of the transaction. And that is so frustrating. And then to have to call up a government helpline.
Yeah.
That adds
Ain't
insult to
nobody
injury.
got time for that.
Yeah. In September of 2021, Eunice Malara, which remember, September is when this started. This was when they officially began this experiment. A 22-year-old medical student waited in line behind dozens of people at a Chivo ATM in San Salvador shortly after launch. She was excited to try out the app, but saw an erroneous balance on her account. When she contacted the government call center, they couldn't resolve the issue and told her they had opened a case. Quote, "It hasn't worked all day," she said, "and I had to call the call center, and they told me they'd opened a case," she said to Rest of World. She hoped to have more luck resolving the issue in person. Others have more ideological complaints about the technology. Software developer in his mid-30s learned about the project along with the rest of the world when Bukele announced it in June of 2021. He said it took us all by surprise. He took an interest, Mr. Gomez took an interest in the digital infrastructure the Salvadoran government was building for its transition to Bitcoin, including the Chivo wallet, which is known as a custodial wallet. Custodial wallets address a common problem for cryptocurrency users. Bitcoin payments employ the blockchain, a process by which every transaction is logged in a digital ledger and then verified through a computational process. Users hold a public key, which assigns them to their Bitcoin holdings, and a private key, which allows them to access their funds. But this can cause problems. Users who lose their key, their private key for instance, can never recover their Bitcoin. With a custodial wallet, a third party holds the keys so that users don't have to worry about losing them. And that is a really good argument for a custodial wallet. There's no doubt about it. Because there are a lot of people who they cannot remember their password to save their life. They don't know where they put the 12 backup words, and they've lost their Bitcoin. So I get why people value a custodial wallet.
You know, I do too.
But this puts the government in custody of your funds, and that's the worst kind of custodial wallet.
Yeah, I think there's probably other ways to solve these sorts of problems potentially, but you know, it is a good question. I think the Edge wallet has had the best solution for decreasing the likelihood of a problem. But obviously it isn't as sort of foolproof as far as recovery as having a hosted wallet.
Right, for someone you can go to and show an ID and have them reset your password or something.
Anytime you build a foolproof system, somebody's going to build a better fool.
That's a good point. It made sense that the Chivo wallet would be custodial. The administration had to build a wallet that would be functional for everyday people, the majority of whom have never even had a bank account. But it didn't sit right with Gomez. Many Bitcoin purists criticize custodial wallets as contradictory to what they see as crypto's fundamental ethos of decentralization. A famous adage in the crypto world goes, "Not your keys, not your coins."
Absolutely.
In other words, if another entity has access to your private key, you don't actually own your Bitcoin. Even though Chivo is technically a private company, it's 99% owned by a state-owned company and funded by a $150 million public trust. In effect, the government controls its citizens' keys. Gomez drafted long Twitter threads about his findings. The next day, a few days before the Chivo wallet was set to launch, the police pulled him over for what they said was a problem with his car, took him to 2 police stations, and confiscated his phones. Authorities announced he was being investigated for financial fraud, but Gomez was never formally arrested or even charged with a crime. 2 organizations have filed a complaint with the country's attorney general, alleging Gomez's detention was arbitrary. He suspects he was targeted for speaking out against Chivo.
That's not cool.
Definitely.
But also not a surprise. Remember, this person, Bukele, for all his backwards hat, cool guy demeanor, he is a dictator, basically. I mean, he's technically elected, but there's been some things we've reported on him before, like he's done some sneaky things with like the Supreme Court there, and there's definitely like some serious corruption in this, this little country. The Chivo wallet, though, isn't mandatory. And Rest of World reached out to the authorities but has not yet heard back.
Of course not.
They don't want to comment. The Chivo wallet isn't mandatory. They can choose to use a different Bitcoin wallet, but users are incentivized with a $30 sign-up bonus, $30 worth of Bitcoin, equivalent to almost 3 days of minimum wage in El Salvador. So there's definitely an incentive for somebody to jump those hoops and get this Bitcoin wallet run by the government. More on what has happened in El Salvador, and you can share your thoughts with us as well. 603-283-6160.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you ever say, I could care less, when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here at 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live, by the way, brought to you by Freedom's Phoenix. That's Freedom's with an S, Phoenix.com. They've got the freshest stories and perspectives on current events from those who value liberty at freedomsphoenix.com. And a daily dispatch you can sign up for and get up to date on science, technology, historical findings, liberty news, government overspending, and the rise of the police state. It's freedomsphoenix.com. We go to your phone calls and thoughts. Jack is in Washington State, and then we'll talk more about the Bitcoin experiment in El Salvador and how it's been a bit of an ugly mess. But go ahead, Jack.
It has been. I'm going to come in kind of as a devil's advocate, and I listen a lot. I feel like we sometimes get lost in a lot of this conversation, where you can find a lot of conversations about Bitcoin online, YouTube videos, where it gets to, and I listen to you guys every single night, 7 days a week, and we get a lot of repeating of the same words, the wallet and that, and not being mean, because I love you guys. I listen a lot, and I love Captain Kickbutt. I'm going to say butt just in case. But I feel like you go one-liner or one line, and that's it for the whole show, and it gets repetitive.
One line?
You guys.
Oh, it's all
One
in Bitcoin. Yeah.
2.5, 3 hours of it. And,
yeah, we don't talk about Bitcoin as often as I think you're trying to make it out to be. I mean, most of the time. It has been most of the show today. It has been.
Last Friday it was too. I go to NPR to listen to NPR, and that's very gross. It's terrible, But anyway, I still appreciate you guys listening.
Well, did you have anything you actually wanted to talk about?
I think ideally, the whole world is run by Bitcoin. I think that you guys have changed my mind about Ukraine and Russia. I think there is something going on there that initially I thought wasn't. I don't know. You guys make a lot of great points.
Okay. So you just wanted to criticize Bitcoin as a topic.
I try to be as nice as possible about it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I honestly don't really care what you think about Bitcoin. Just straight up. To me, Bitcoin is one of the most important topics. Cryptocurrency is one of the most important topics, Jack.
I miss Badass or whatever his name is. He's way better than you, man.
Okay, have a nice night. Bitcoin, if it's not for you, then go listen to NPR. I really don't care. But Bitcoin is one of the most important topics. Cryptocurrency is one of the most important topics on the planet because it empowers the individual to escape from the fiat money system. And if you don't understand why that matters, then maybe this isn't the show for you. I don't care. It's fine. You can dislike the topics if you want to. The phones are open here, and you can bring up anything you want, but he had nothing to say.
Yeah, you know what I would say in reaction to that is that we actually, this Free Talk Live, we cover a lot of different stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? If you listen on one night of the week, you're going to hear different content than the next night of the
There's
week.
been a lot of coverage of Russia and Ukraine, as he acknowledged.
I think there's some, it's funny because I think there is some valid point in some respects we did cover only crypto basically this whole show.
So,
and I don't think
we're not obligated to do anything else.
I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that, but I could understand it's going to turn some people off and attract other people.
I get that.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's other shows out there. You don't have to listen to Free Talk Live. If you don't understand the value of what cryptocurrency is doing and why it's important in the world, after all the times we've explained it and have made crystal clear as to why it's so critical for freedom, for human individual freedom, and primarily, besides the fact that Free Talk Live is open phones, which it is, which is why Sarah can call in and talk about allergies, or, you could have called in about whatever you wanted there, but, it's open phones primarily. It is ultimately the show that we want to do. We bring in things to talk about, and tonight, we wanted to talk about Bitcoin. We started with the same story, and from there went to, and it was, by the way, related to Russia.
And that is usually a good indicator too that it's a good topic when multiple people bring in the same story, more or less.
Yep. And then we ended up getting onto the St. Martin's thing, which I don't even remember how that happened for whatever reason. It wasn't in my show prep. Oh, that was your show prep, I think.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yep.
So, and then San Salvador, or El Salvador, is related to that. And it's a topic we've discussed over the last several months from time to time, and this is a follow-up on it. In fact, we haven't talked about El Salvador in any significant sense in months on this program, so it's time for a follow-up. Back to the story here, restofworld.org. Again, this is a critical experiment, what's going on there in El Salvador, and it's messed up. And we're talking about how they screwed this thing up here. In November of 2021, because it was the government mandating it, that's the short version, 2 months after the Bitcoin law came into effect, hundreds of visitors poured into San Salvador's small international airport from across the world. They were waved past the immigration check without even paying the usual $12 fee to enter the country. Although if they wanted to pay, officers were accepting Bitcoin. It was a Bitcoin week in El Salvador, a week of conferences and events that attracted an international crowd of crypto believers and an opportunity for Bukele's administration to convince the global Bitcoin community of what the cryptocurrency could do for El Salvador and what El Salvador could do for Bitcoin. Bitcoin Beach had been transformed for the occasion. The streets were littered with food stands with big plastic signs emblazoned with the Bitcoin symbol. A DJ played techno and pop songs, including a cryptocurrency-themed version of Despacito, the lyrics being Tengo que bailar contigo hoy, I have to dance with you today, replaced with Tengo que comprar un Bitcoin hoy, I have to buy a Bitcoin today. Daggert Allison, who told Rest of World he's a property manager who dabbles in cryptocurrency in Los Angeles as a hobby, had been at Bukele's initial announcement in the Miami Bitcoin conference. He was so enthusiastic about the Bitcoin law, he knew he had to visit El Salvador, but was concerned about safety issues in the country. Bitcoin Week was the perfect excuse to come, knowing he would be surrounded by a wave of like-minded people. But the Bitcoin Mecca didn't quite live up to his expectations. Now, keep in mind, Bitcoin Beach is the Bitcoin place of all of El Salvador. This is where the whole experiment started before it even became an official legal currency. So this should be the Mecca, right? Bitcoin Beach should be the Keene of El Salvador. But it didn't quite live up to its expectations. He had tried to rent a surfboard from a stand in El Tunco with Bitcoin, and they told him they didn't accept it. He asked if they had Chivo, the official government wallet. They said yes, but they didn't know how to use it with other wallets. The functionality was hidden behind a confusing array of buttons.
Ooh.
So yeah, you can use other wallets in El Salvador, but it doesn't sound like they've made it easy for people with the official government app to interact with them. Quote, from a Bitcoin perspective, it's amazing. It's so groundbreaking and beautiful, and in my mind looks like perfection, he said about El Salvador. And then you come here, and you realize that on the ground, it's a different ordeal. It's a struggle, he said. Craig Tonjes, a cheerful emigre from the United States who ran a hotel, or rather a hostel in El Zante before leaving during the pandemic, said that Bitcoin Week preparations made it seem much more catered around the cryptocurrency than it actually was. He said it had a very Potemkin Village vibe.
Oh, man.
You familiar with that reference?
No.
I know the reference. I can't explain it though.
Potemkin Village, if I recall correctly, was a sort of show village, and I believe it was in the Soviet Union, wasn't it?
Yeah. North Korea has something of that nature. Yeah.
So basically, it was like a phony village to impress people when the reality was much different from that. Since he returned in November, he said the only people he's seen carry out transactions with Bitcoin have been tourists. The highlight of Bitcoin Week was announced with just a day's notice after all the conference panels had ended and many attendees had flown home. Swigging from bottles of Suprema and Regia beer, the remaining crowd faced a stage overlooking the Pacific coast. Late in the evening, they raised their smartphones, ready to record as fireworks exploded overhead. A man walked casually on stage, wearing a white shirt, slacks, and a backward baseball cap, and carrying a microphone. Words on the screen introduced him as El Presidente. Bukele had come to speak to the crowd. As the music died down, he addressed his audience in English. So how's Bitcoin Week going? He said. Bukele spoke the Bitcoin community's language, referencing Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of Bitcoin, and sprinkling his speech with insider jargon like orange pilled, which means something good for Bitcoin. Then he made an announcement that he'd been leading up to, the creation of a new city called Bitcoin City in the southern region of La Union. It's not just an idea, but it would actually be a legal municipality with a mayor and everything. Now, for those that have not heard of Bitcoin City, they say that this Bitcoin City residents would pay no income tax, no capital gains tax, no property tax, no payroll tax, and no municipal tax. They want to fund the Bitcoin City through a Bitcoin bond. And that gets very interesting as well. We won't have time to talk about it tonight, but I will put this full story over on our social media accounts for you to dig in deeper. But that gives you a little taste of just how messy things have been so far with this official government-mandated Bitcoin rollout. It's definitely going to be something to keep our eyes on, and we will definitely do that. And if
Good ideas don't have to be mandatory.
And if you don't like it, call in and bring up something else. We'll see you tomorrow. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. officials say the Russians have lost control of Kherson, the first city they had managed to seize in Ukraine. It's the latest in a series of setbacks for Vladimir Putin's armed forces. In Moscow today, Russian Defense Ministry officials claimed the first phase of their military operation is now over, and they plan to focus on cementing the independence of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It's unclear whether that's an indication of a real shift in military strategy. President Vladimir Putin insisted today the West is trying to cancel his country.
So-called cancel culture flourishes in the West, ostracizing, boycotting, silencing facts, writers, and works that don't fit into their templates. They've cancelled Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and leading Russian works of literature.
In Poland, President Biden, continuing his European tour, visited members of the US Armed Forces who have taken up position on NATO's eastern flank. He told them Ukraine is a litmus test for a broader battle between democracy and autocracy.
What you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along, it changes. Fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years